Alright boys, welcome back to the stream. Today is day 14, so already for 2 weeks we've been going at it, and I'm really happy with the progress we've been making. Today we're tackling CSS functions, and hopefully we can get a couple of these done so I can get closer to the sign up form and something more interesting, because probably today also is going to be a whole lot of reading, and I don't know how much doing there will be, but let's see. Day 14. Okay, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see as well. Yeah. We'll begin with CSS functions. Alright, so you may have noticed that some property values you've worked with in CSS have a slightly different syntax when the value is a word followed by a pair of parentheses containing information between them, as in background, color, RGB, so on. You're using CSS functions. Alright, in this lesson we'll cover the basics of what a function is and some common ways they're used in CSS. Lesson overview. This section contains a general overview of topics that you'll learn in this lesson. Recognize the basic parts of a CSS function. Learn about the calc, min, max and count functions and how to use them. Now, I'll just take a moment. I'll be right back, just a sec. Alright, I'm back. My nose is still a little bit fucked, so I had to use one of these, like the nasal sprays. How close can this camera focus actually? Yeah, not very much. Come on, autofocus. Alright, it did. But anyways. That should be better because I have trouble with breathing and just talking, so this will be easier. So, what is a function and how are they used in CSS? Similar to programming languages, functions in CSS are reusable pieces of code which perform specific tasks. Functions are passed arguments between parentheses, each of which is used by the function in a specific way. Some common examples are the RGB function, linear gradient. Alright, so I never actually thought about this, but those are actually functions. Indeed, I've been using them, but I've never thought about it. Here the value of color in the function RGB, which accepts arguments in the form of numbers. It processes those numbers to calculate the RGB color corresponding to the 3 values given. Similarly, the background property has a value of linear gradient. Linear gradient generates a gradient image using the parameters it's been given. It needs at least 2 color arguments, color to transition between, and additionally you can set the angle direction of the gradient line, like we've done in the example, add more color values, etc. Okay, pretty cool. Unlike programming languages we'll use in top CSS, the Odin project, CSS does not allow us to create our own functions. Instead, the language comes bundled with a list of pre-made functions that will help you solve the most common styling problems. Besides defining colors, there are several CSS functions that are useful when designing a website layout and sizing. These become important when thinking about responsive design. Let's go over a few of those functions like calc, min, max, and comp. So calc, the most powerful use cases for calc include mixing units, and the ability to nest calculations. Alright, so how do they use it here? The root they set to main of calc 100 viewpoint height minus calc minus the header height plus the footer height, something like this. Hey there, Supreme Overall, thank you for tuning in, my man, really appreciate it. How are you doing? So we'll take a look at how calc is being used here, as we have the root with a header of 3 rem, footer 40 pixels, and main will calculate 100 vh minus header which is 3 rem plus footer which is 40 pixels. Header and footer and main are all examples of CSS variables. You'll be learning about this in the next lesson. Setting main to equal the outcome of 100 vh minus 3 rem plus 40 pixels. To put it in another way, calc is handling the math for us even though we're mixing vh. That's what they meant by mixing units. So indeed you can calculate like 3 rem plus 40 pixels and so on minus the view height. Even though combined with CSS variables, calc can save us from the headache of repeating CSS rules. You should be able to grasp how calc is used in the above code pen embed. We encourage you to play around with different units and sizes of the elements to see what results you get before moving on. So if you say here, for example, 90, I didn't see what changed. 40, 10. Yeah, I'm not seeing much difference, but anyways, you can do this probably 10, and then everything will get crumbled. Min does an excellent job of helping us create responsive websites. Take a look at this example. So where are they using min? Icon holder, min height and width. So if we change this, what will happen? So the height, although we changed the width, but the height shrunk. Yep, not sure what it does. Focus on this line, width, min 150 pixels, 100%. We can make several observations. If there are 150 pixels available to the image, it will take up all 150 pixels. If there are not 150 pixels available, the image will switch to 100% of the parent element's width. In the first case, min selects 150 pixels since 150 is the minimum between 150 and 100% of the parent's width. In the second, it chooses 100%. Min behaves as a boundary for the maximum allowed value, which in this example is 150 pixels. You're able to do basic math inside a min. For example, with min 80 ch 100 viewport width minus 2 rem. Alright, and if I do, like, if I remove this, what will happen? No, I can't hear there. Alright, so if they said if there is available 150 pixels in the image, it will take up the 150 pixels. So, and if there is not 150 available, it will take up 10% in this example. So I guess there is no available 150 pixels, so that's why it's taking the 10%, or what is 50? Nope. 150. No, it's just taking the 10% then. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I didn't get it correctly. I'm sure there will be articles explaining it later on. Max works the same way as min, only in reverse. It will select the largest possible value from within the parentheses. You can think of max as ensuring so it will take the smaller from these two. So either 100% of the parent, if that is the smaller one, or 150 pixels. And here, since I said 10%, this will always be smaller. Indeed, only if I just write 55 pixels here, it will be smaller. So it will take the smaller between the two, and max will be the other way around. Alright. Consider the following property of a given element. So it's giving him 3 values this time, so the largest between the 3. From this list of given sizes, max will select the largest one as long as 4 EM or 50% result in lengths longer than 100 pixels. Max will select the bigger one of them. If they're smaller than 100 pixels, maybe as a cause of the user's font size preferences or their browser's window size or zoom level, then 100 pixels will win out as the largest. You can think of 100 pixels in this example as a guard value. Width here won't ever be set to less than 100 pixels, right? So 100 pixels is the minimum here, let's say. Max function is most useful when viewing window is either exceptionally small or the user increases the content size by using browser zoom feature. You may not find a lot of use for max at first, but it's a good tool to be aware for projects where accessibility is important. Alright, so Quamp is an interesting one. I've been using it, but it's tricky to get because you get an ideal value, otherwise the value you want the text, for example, to be the font size, and then you're giving a smallest value it can be and a largest, but it's kind of tricky to get it right, in my opinion, or in my experience, let's say. So they say Clamp is a great way to make elements fluid and responsive. Clamp takes 3 values, smallest, ideal, and largest. The Clamp CSS function uses these values to set the smallest value, ideal value, and largest value. In the above example, this would mean the smallest acceptable font size would be 320 pixels and the largest would be 60 rem. The ideal font size would be 80 viewport width. Hello there, Zohaib Hassan. Sorry if I butchered your name, bro. Thank you for tuning into my stream. How are you doing today? So we have an assignment. Take a look at the complete list of CSS functions and how they are used. Okay, have a more in-depth look at, and they're giving us another article. This one, I mean, sure, I've seen most of those, but you sure cannot memorize it all. So I guess in the future, when you need one of them, you just Google. Are you learning HTML and CSS? Yes, I'm going through the Odin project, and I finished the foundations on stream. The foundations was both HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We did some cool projects like this, for example. This we did on stream. 3D rock paper scissors game. And now we're going through the full stack JavaScript, but in the beginning there is a intermediate HTML and CSS course that we're going through. But yeah, check out HTML and CSS course by my bro Code on YouTube. Alright, sure. Right, let me see where we're at. Right, this is the other resource that they wanted us to go through, so let's check this out. How did you hear about the Odin project? I think I heard about it a couple of years ago, but I really didn't delve into it. But now, I don't know, it just popped up, I don't really remember, but I wanted something that they didn't hold your hand through the course. It wasn't just video lessons and so on, and this seemed perfect, so I picked it up. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can read as well. Learn how to control element sizing, maintain proper spacing, and implement fluid typography using these 3 well-supported CSS functions. As responsive design becomes more nuanced, CSS is constantly evolving to give authors increased control. The min, max, and com functions now supported in all modern browsers are among the latest tools in making authoring websites and apps more dynamic and responsive. You can use these functions to control element sizing, anti-resizing, maintain spacing between elements, create flexible and fluid typography. Sure. I'm taking, hey there Tariq, thank you for tuning in. I'm taking object-oriented programming this semester in college, and you give me an inspiration to boost to go and crush it. Oh my god, man, that's so cool. Thanks so much. I really hope you crush it. I'm pretty sure you will. That's so cool to hear, man. Damn. It is complete course from basic to advanced with projects. Cool. Sure, I'll check it out. That is awesome, Tariq. Thanks so much, my guy, for sharing that. You made my day, indeed. Thanks so much. I know you will crush it. So, they give us min, max, quamp, so on. Object-oriented is cool as well. I remember learning it in Java, and you can make so much with it. So you can use min, max, and clamp on the right side of any CSS expression where it would make sense. For min and max, you provide an argument list of values, and the browser determines which one of the smallest or largest. For example, in the case of width, you can set a minimum of 1 rem, 50%, 10 viewport width. The browser calculates which of these relative units is the smallest and uses that value for the element's width. Are you a college student? No, I'm working full-time as a COBOL developer at a bank, but I'm more passionate about full-stack development on the web. The max function does the opposite, alright. The quamp, this for I guess you can use it not only with font sizes, but with elements width, height, so on. To use quamp, enter 3 values: minimum, ideal, and maximum. Alright. You can use these functions anywhere a length, frequency, angle, time, percentage, number, or integer is allowed. You can use them on their own, as in font size, or with calc, as in font size, and then they calculate the size. Composed, as in font size, max, min, and so on. Alright. Bro, please check the course. I will. Hi man, I'm glad to aware you in Bulgaria. I recently played a save in Football Manager with a team from Bulgaria, so I learned a lot about the country. That's amazing. I'm from Varna currently, but I'm originally from Plovdiv, and Varna is at the seaside. I moved here for work. I think it's the second or third largest city. Where are you from, Tariq? The perfect width, yep, quamp. Alright. Manage padding. You can also use max to set a maximum padding size. This example comes from CSS Tricks, where reader Quawa de anyways shared this idea. Let an element have additional padding at larger screen sizes, but keep a minimum padding at smaller screen sizes. That makes sense actually. To do this, use calc or max and subtract the minimum padding from both sides of an element. So they do calc 100 viewport width minus content width divided by 2. This is Chernomore, yes indeed. This is too hard to comprehend like in my head, but is this the example here? Wait, let me padding 2 rem 50, yeah, so this right here. So what happens? You can see as they drag it out, the padding increases and it becomes more centered, let's say. So this is a good idea. I'm from Bosnia, nice, perfect. I played with web.dev, so Polish was in my arch nemesis. I played with they're different teams, I think. So we have web.dev, oops. So like these guys, and I think web.dev is a different one. Yeah, they're from a different city, but my team is web.dev. This is my favorite one. I even have a t-shirt I can show on stream. But anyways, fluid typography, I am a sucker for this. I really enjoy this one. I actually made it in the 3D rock paper scissors game. I implemented it with the stars. As you can see, if I make the screen smaller, the stars will also shrink a bit. I don't know how well you see that, but yeah, I cannot get it smaller than that, but anyways, they get a little bit smaller, and I used clamp for this. Oh yes, Locomotive, they are really successful in my save. Do you play professional football or? Okay. To enable fluid typography is the clamp. Alright, sure. So I'm pretty familiar with these, the min, max and the clamp. What are the 4 CSS math functions we covered above? So calc, min, max and clamp. How do you use CSS math functions? Like you just write it out like calc and do the expression there. How can CSS functions help you make websites and applications more responsive? Yeah, those are pretty obvious, like nah, never did, only kick about with friends. Yeah, that's cool. I guess it's really hard to be a professional football player and there's a lot of competition. Right, so there is a quick video, 10-minute one we can watch. I'm just going to put in my headphones and we'll dive into it. This is about using the CSS numeric functions, basically what we learned about in the article, plus min-max. Alright, let me see if the audio is right.
All the CSS math functions. Now this includes min.
Tell me if it's too loud or it's okay.
Max, min-max, clamp, and calc. All of them have their own special little things about them, but all very useful things that we can use in our CSS to dynamically change the value of numeric properties. So I've got a very simple page here. I've got floated images inside of paragraphs. I've got a header that's got an H1 and an H2, and that's it. That's the whole page. And what we're going to do is we're going to dynamically size the fonts, we're going to dynamically size the images, and then we're going to create some columns, and we're going to dynamically size the columns. So let's sort of start with these two right here, clamp and calc.
He's going to do the font size first.
And we're going to look at the font size and the line height for the paragraphs. So this bit of text right here, and actually all the paragraphs.
By default, Odin project opens every type in a new tab, so every link in a new tab, so you don't need to manually do it. Alright. What was the case actually is my middle button actually doesn't work, so I'm just used to doing that a whole lot. But yeah, thank you for that.
We're going to dynamically size this stuff, and we're going to make the line height adjust as the fonts adjust as well. So we'll start off with the font size, and we will use the clamp function here. So instead of just saying, okay, 1.2 REM, great. My base font size in my HTML tag, I've got to set to 20 pixels. So my fonts for my paragraphs are 1.2 times that, but they're always going to be 1.2 times that 20 pixels. It's always going to be the size. I want to dynamically change that. And I'm going to replace this with the clamp function, replace the value with my clamp function, and it's going to allow me to provide a default starting point. So let's say 4VH. And actually, let's bump up the font size here for you guys. There we go. So I'm setting 4VH, 4% of the viewport height. That is my default value. So whatever the screen size is, right here, the total from here to here.
Do you have to use quamp for this one? Can you just make it 4VH without the quamp?
The total of my viewport, 4% of that, that is going to be my starting point for my fonts. Now, I also want to sort of bound it. I'm going to say, okay, here's the minimum value and here's the maximum value. So if it's below, as this 4% gets smaller and smaller as the screen gets adjusted, I'm going to set a bottom limit of 0.8 REM. So it's not allowed to get smaller than that size. And then on the other side, if I've got a really tall screen, there's only so big I want to make my paragraph text, so I'm going to set that to 2 REM. And this is the range. Here's what I'm aiming for. This is going to adjust depending on the size of the screen. Here's my smallest, here's my largest. So we'll save that, jump back in here. You can see my font is bigger than it was before. And as I adjust my window, my viewport height, you can see my fonts will.
That's pretty cool. You just have to be careful with setting the ideal value, because one time I've set the ideal value, I think, larger than the maximum value, or smaller than the minimum value, and then it just messes it up.
Change size.
So it really has to be the in between the ideal value.
Stays the exact same as this adjusts. So we're going to adjust that next, and we're going to use the calc function for that. Okay, let's jump back in here. Line height, we'll comment that one out, and we're going to use our calc function. Now the calc function is just like the name implies, it does calculations. You can put in different numeric values with different units, and it will calculate what that is meant to be. So I can say, all right, my line height is going to be 1.2 REM plus, so that's 1.2 times that 20 pixel that I set in the HTML tag, plus 4% of the viewport height, or some other value. Not using the same units. So as I shrink this and grow this, it actually is changing, not just the font size, but the line height is changing as well.
Oh.
We play around with this. Let's see. So I'm adding 1% in there.
It's not that noticeable, but it does change.
Differences. If I made this 10%, there you can see that it's calculating, and it's dynamically calculating that space.
Cool.
All right, I'm going to put it back to 4. There we go. So that's clamp and calc. Clamp, you get your default, you get your smallest, your largest, so it bounds the upper and lower ranges. Calc, any sort of value that is numeric, any units that you want, and you can use this for transforms when you're talking about degrees as well. You can use that as part of this. All right, next I'm going to move on to my images, and I want to talk about the max function and the min function. So let's come in here, and I'm going to change this width. Right now I've got it set to 50%. So this image is 50% of this space, the paragraph. I'm going to change that. Instead of just being 50%, I'm going to provide, let's do the max one first. So we can use this max function, provide 2 values for it. And if I said 50%, comma, 300 pixels, I'm saying which is the largest of these two values. So as your screen changes width, that's going to change how big 50% is. So it's going to pick the larger of these two. It's kind of like saying, just like this.
Yo, cryptic out of context, what's up, my man? How are you doing?
Values for these two things. I'm saying it's got to be at least 300
Welcome
pixels,
back.
but 50% is what I'm aiming for. So always make it 50% until you get down to
300
this
pixels.
300 pixel point.
I'm good, what about you? I'm too, man, as well.
Becomes the minimum.
Learning some advanced
You're
CSS,
not allowed to
intermediate
go below
CSS
that.
actually. We're doing the CSS functions today.
Down, 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 shrinking until it hits 300 pixels, and now it can't get any smaller than that. So it will
Alright.
grow and grow and grow. I want the biggest of those two values, 50%
Nice, yep.
or 300 pixels.
CSS and HTML is kind of boring, and most of the time on stream we're just reading through articles and not coding anything, so I feel it's a little bit more boring, but hopefully we get through it soon and begin with more interesting
When
projects.
50% becomes less than 300 pixels, we keep the 300 pixels. So that's the max function. Same sort of idea, we're taking two values inside of here, and we can pass in.
I'm not going to be able to see your streams for a week because of work. No worries, man, get done with your work. I'm going to be here afterwards, I promise. We will not stop, so don't worry about it. Take care of your work.
300 pixels. This is going to be equivalent to writing.
Are you traveling somewhere or? And I've signed up for doing project. Let's go! Let's go, my man. Are you traveling somewhere for work or you just have a lot of work?
So same sort of ideas we were doing before. Except now we're
Yep.
saying the smaller of these two values. My maximum is now 300 pixels. But once we drop below that, save this. So 300 is the biggest, but when I go below that, I'm allowed to go down. So 50% of the width
To shrink,
or
alright.
300 pixels,
Yep.
whichever is the larger of the two. So these are our two different ways of doing it. And both of them, it's like replacing these two lines. Alright, last one I wanted to talk about was
Min-max.
min-max
Yeah, min-max.
function. And the min-max function works with
I have to travel to Oman and my work schedule there is over or less than 9 hours. Where is Oman? Oman. Middle East. Oh, that's crazy, bro. Yo, let me see. Saudi Arabia. Oh, that's so cool. I wish I can go there one day. Nice. What do you do for work?
grid layout. So
Oops.
it works with the grid template rows, grid template columns, or the grid auto properties. So in my header, I have here an H1 and an H2. I'm going to turn these into two columns and show you the min-max working with those columns. So inside of our header, I'm going to set display to grid.
You do the min-max now. Or he's doing the
We'll
columns.
set grid template columns. Now, we could, at this point, just say, I'm going to make it 2 fractions and 1 fraction. So H1 is taking up 2/3 the width. Right here, this is taking up 2/3 of the width. This is taking up 1/3.
Wow, supposed to train with my team in Oman for a Python That seems very interesting, man. And see, you're traveling, that's so cool. Nice. Yeah, definitely do your work, and after that I'm still here, so don't worry about me.
And as I resize, it's always going to
That's very interesting. What project are you guys doing?
We can, with min-max, come in here and sort of say, okay, we've got 2 fractions, but I also want to cap that. I want to give it a lower and an upper bounds. Same sort of thing that we were doing before with the min width, max width, or the min and the max. We're saying this is the smallest that I
All
want.
right.
This is the biggest that I want it to be.
Oh,
And I'll just throw a few properties in here just to align these things because they were working as rows.
don't you need like a colon in here? No, I don't think so.
There we go. So I'm just going to center them vertically and space them evenly across the two. My H2 is still going to be 1 fraction, so a third. And then we've got 2/3 until it gets down to 400 pixels. Then it's not allowed to get smaller than 400 pixels.
Alright, that makes sense.
So there we are. We've got this.
So this is the 1 fraction, this is the 2 fraction, or 100 pixels, 400 pixels.
But then we get to the point where that heading is now 400 pixels.
Right.
And it's not allowed to get smaller than 400 pixels. And that's why this other content,
Min-max.
H2, is spilling out from inside of here. So we've got a min and a max value. Smallest, largest. And
Makes
then
sense.
A fixed size, effectively a fixed size for the H2, for the second column. It's a fixed proportion of the page. All right, so that is all of them. So we've got the min, the max, min-max, clamp, and calc. All of them very powerful. Have some fun with those. Experiment with them, because really using them is the only way that you're going to get it into your head exactly how it works all the time. I can talk and give example after example after example, but really playing with them yourself is how you really wrap your head around them. All right, so I hope that helps. If you want a copy of this code, it's linked to down in the description. And as always, thanks for watching.
I always love that when there is a resource on YouTube, you have everyone commenting about the Odin project, so I'll jump in as well. I'm here from the Odin project. Like, you have many of those comments on the YouTube videos, although with each section that you pass, the comments become less and less. So here are only 42 comments. Alright, and we have 2 more things to read through. Now I'm not sure we'll go through it because I already got the main idea, and these are all basically just repeating themselves at this point. And this is from the additional resources, so I'm going to mark this complete and we'll jump over to the next one. And this is custom properties. So these are like variables, isn't it? Alright, let's read through it. So custom properties, also known as CSS variables, can be a really useful and powerful tool when writing our CSS files. In short, they allow us to reference a CSS value however many times we want throughout a file. By using custom properties instead of having to update every single instance of a specific value. This shade of red is too light. Let's change the shade of all 7 of these selectors. We will only need to update a single instance, the custom property itself. Not only that, but custom properties can help us keep colors consistent throughout the project, something that will be really helpful as our projects get larger. We can even redefine custom properties under different contexts, which is incredibly useful for creating themes, such as the dark and light themes you see on many websites these days. So the lesson overview is, this section contains a general overview of topics that you will learn in this lesson: how to declare custom properties, how to use a custom property in a rule declaration, the scope of custom properties, the root selector, using media queries. Alright, so using custom properties, the syntax for declaring and accessing a custom property is not too different from how we write normal rule declarations. Is this how you define it, or this is just a standard of writing CSS properties? I'm not sure. So that's it. First we declare our custom property with a double hyphen followed by a case sensitive hyphen separated property name, so cover error text, right? So this is the syntax, not like var anything. Although I remember in SAS, or I don't know if you have it in CSS, but in SAS I remember that you had to do var, if I'm not mistaken. That's it. We declare our custom property with a double hyphen followed by a case sensitive hyphen. Alright, and that wouldn't be same as cover error text with capitalized letters, which can be whatever name you want. The use of kebab case single hyphens to separate words is very important here because spaces are not valid. Then we can store any CSS value in our newly declared custom property, whether it be a cover value, shorthand value, or even more complex function. Just to give you a few examples, when we want to access a custom property, we use the var function as the value of a CSS property, and then place our custom property inside the parentheses, including the double hyphen at the beginning. Fallback values. Alright, the var function actually accepts two parameters. The first parameter we've already gone over, which is the custom property we want to assign. The second parameter is an optional fallback value. When a fallback value is provided in addition to a custom property, the fallback value will be used if the custom property is invalid or hasn't been declared yet. We can even pass in another custom property as a fallback, which can have its own fallback value as well. Alright, so this is very good that they thought of that. Indeed, if something happens with our variables or we forget to declare them, something like that, we have something to fall back on. That's cool. In the above example, our background cover property would have a value of black and our cover property would have a value of white. If the cover text custom property was invalid or didn't exist, the fallback to our fallback would take over the cover property, so it would have a value of yellow. Alright, so in this background cover undeclared property black, so background cover I see. Alright, we move to scope, and in the first example above you may have noticed that we declared and then accessed our custom properties within the same declaration block. This is because the scope of a custom property is determined by a selector. This scope includes the selector, the custom property. This scope includes the selector the custom property was declared for, as well as any descendants of that selector. If you're familiar with how scope works in JavaScript, this sort of behavior should feel a little similar. Alright, so I'm going to mute myself for a second because there is some vacuum action going on. Anyways, in the example below, only the element with the cool paragraph class would get styled with a red background, since a descendant of the element where our custom property is declared. What do they have here? Cool paragraph. Check out my cool red background. Boring paragraph. I'm not in the scope, so I'm not cool. So what is the scope? Cool div main background red, cool paragraph. So the variable is set in the scope of this div and it can be used in the scope of the div, and you cannot, for example, use the main background in the boring paragraph because it's outside of the div. Alright. the root selector. While there might be times where you want to limit the scope of a custom property, you may want to be able to use other custom properties on many unrelated selectors. One workaround would be declaring the same custom property on a bunch of selectors, but that defeats one of the purposes of using custom property in the first place, the ease of changing multiple instances of a value at once. Alright. I'm just gonna read through this on stream, but I'm going to mute my mic for a second so it's not annoying for you guys. Wait. So what course are you talking about? Is it this one? Learn CSS in 1 hour, or this is the guy you're talking about, right? HTML CSS course. HTML. This one. Yeah, this one.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? In this series, I'm going to show you everything you file name. Nothing appears to happen.
Yeah, I told you. What are you trying to do? Override tips. Thank you for tuning in, my guy. Just going through the Odin project. Currently, we're going through a lecture on CSS properties or variables. Not trying to do anything, just go through the resources, I guess. Check the views. Yep, 2.8, that's pretty good, I guess. We can maybe go through it, but I already know most of HTML and CSS. I'm just going through it because I need to for the Odin project. I'm more interested in JavaScript and so on, but I've made a lot of these already. But yeah, I can probably bookmark this. I'll bookmark it and I'll check it out later if I need to. We have a video to watch here on the assignments. Let me wait for this ad to run out. And then we have 2 articles, I guess. So we'll go through these. But first, let's watch through this and see what they say about CSS variables. The MDN docs are fire too. Yes, indeed. Before, I used to stay away from documentation, the MDN docs and so on, but right now this is primarily where I learn from. Like, this is the best information you can get from the documentation, and I don't worry about videos too much right now. But let's see what that is. I'm going to mute because there is a vacuum cleaner and it's probably annoying. But yeah, we'll watch through it together.
You're in the right place. Let's go check them out. Hi there, my name is Kevin and welcome to my channel where we learn how to build a web and how to make it look good while we're at it. This is the beginning of a deep dive into CSS variables. CSS variables are amazing. They're really, really cool. I'm happy they're here. Browser support is almost amazing. And this video itself is just the start of a mini-series or a deep dive into CSS variables. And in this video, we're just looking at what they even are and how you can start using them in your projects today.
Okay guys, so before we get into...
Yep, docs are the best to learn from. Straight from the source, indeed.
How to actually write your own CSS custom properties, the first thing I want to look at is why they're really cool. This is just a really simple site that I've come up and built with, and I've used my custom properties to build this out. So here we can see I have this dark color. Now let's just say I change dark to red. It's going to change here, but it's also going to change everything down here because I've used that property in multiple places. If you're used to SAS variables, this might seem really familiar with you. There are a lot of similarities, but there are some big differences between them as well. So just another example here is section padding. Let's say I make that 0. Everything is going to stick together. Now you might say, well, I just put that in one spot. So here I have my section padding, I have my section padding, I have my section padding. So I only have to change it in one place, and it's going to change throughout the site everywhere that I've used it. So you can probably see why that would be really, really useful. And just one last thing just to show you here, we also have this white color. So say I change my white over to red, it's going to change the color of this text, this over here, and my background color there all at the same time. So it just makes it so we don't have to try and hunt down things, either just using like a find and replace type of thing in your code editor or hunting them down manually, which is, oh, that's terrible. So let's go over to this, and this is the same thing but with no custom variables used anywhere. And we can look at how we can actually write one, and it's really easy to do it. The one thing you have to do is you have to define it inside of a selector. So if you're using
the root,
like SAS, you can just make a variable. It doesn't have to be inside of
that's what I remember from SAS. You can just write in a variable just at the top of the document. You don't have to put it in the root or body or anything like that.
CSS custom properties, they do have to be defined, and that's because they're custom properties. They act as variables, but just like font size is a property, we're making a new property. We're inventing the property. But our browser knows what font size is, so we can easily change it for us. It doesn't know what our custom property is, so we have to define what it is while we're creating it. So what I'm going to do here is, so just in my body, I could actually declare them there, but where you're going to see the most often declared is root. Now, if you've never seen root before, it's going to the root element of your page, which is always pretty much in any HTML page will be your HTML element. The reason we put them on the root, it's a bit higher specificity than putting HTML, and it also just, it's convenient to group everything together in one spot, so it just keeps it all together. And by putting it on as in your root or your HTML element, what it's allowing you to do is they're becoming global properties, so you can use them throughout your site, because as we're going to see, these properties cascade down.
Yep. So this is the highest scope we can use.
Or a custom property. I'm going to call them variables now, just because that's what everyone calls them.
Yeah, variables.
First thing is 2 hyphens. So you just do hyphen, hyphen, dash, dash, minus sign, whatever you want to call them. I do 2 of those, and then I write the name of it. So I write the name of my variable, I put a colon, and then I write the value that I want to give that variable. So it's always going to be name and value. So it's just like writing your own font size. You're writing the property, you're writing the thing here. And it's these 2 dashes that let the browser know it's a custom property and not a normal property. So let's just say I come in here and I say my primary color is 456. And so now I've defined my variable primary color as #456. Now I want to actually use that in my document. This is where it's a little bit heavy to write, I guess. I wish they'd come up with a better syntax, to be honest with you, but that's okay. Let's just say on my body here, I want to use it. So I can say color, and now I want to use that custom property, or I want to use my variable. So I'm telling it it's a variable. So I put var, open and close parentheses, and inside the parentheses, I write the name of my variable. So I do hyphen, hyphen, primary color. And it's a little dark, you probably didn't see a change. Let's just make it red so we can really see it going. There we go, and you can see that it's all changed.
Everything goes to
it.
it.
Works like that. Now, one thing that's really important to know about about these, as I mentioned earlier, is that they cascade, just like anything else. And again, that's why we're writing them in the root. We want them to be global things that we can use anywhere in our document. Because let's say over here, I have this little intro thing. So let's say I come in here and I write I'll put it at the top. If you're going to do them, inside a selector, I'd say to put them at the top just to make them easier to see. So let's say I make a secondary color here, and we'll call this one, I'm going to make this one steel blue. So now what I could do is in here, I could say that the color of my text is var, and secondary color. Color. And you can see up here, this is the only thing I have in my intro, and that's changed to my secondary color. And then I'm going to go, oh, well, you know what? I'd like all of this stuff to be that as well. So there's my sales points. So let's come down here and do sales points. And in here we'll do color is var, secondary color. And it doesn't work.
It's not in the scope.
An error, but there we go, it's gone. So this isn't working, and it's because I've declared this secondary color inside of intro. That means I can only use it in the intro. I can't actually use it anywhere else. So for something like this, it is important to know, and this is why we generally don't declare them inside of selectors like this, because it gets limited to this area. So what I'm going to do is, one thing you will notice is it doesn't break the site. One thing with Sass variables, if you're used to using those, if you put in an invalid one, your Sass won't compile. With this, it's just going to ignore it. It's going to go, oh, I don't know what this is,
right,
so I'm ignoring it. It would be the same as if you did like padding 50 pixels. I misspelled padding. It doesn't break my CSS file.
It just doesn't work.
So it ignores it. The one nice thing with them is if you made a mistake somewhere, whether it's a spelling mistake or something else, it will still work. Well, your site will still work, just that one property will not work. You can also create like a mini fallback. So you can say, if secondary color isn't working, make my text yellow. That's another option as well. So I want it to be secondary color, but if for
that was a clever way to showcase the fallback color. You just write the variable in outside of the scope to show the fallback color.
For some reason this isn't working, you can put yellow.
Or how it works.
This could be useful for troubleshooting problems, because if secondary color is working, it's going to ignore this. So if I in this one, which is my text here at the top, if I add yellow here, it's not going to change. because secondary color is working. So it's using this one first, and then if this doesn't work, it's going to use this one. Over here, this isn't working, so it's falling back to yellow. So this could be useful for just debugging issues. You could throw in this and see what happens, and you could find any mistakes, either spelling mistakes or badly declared variables or whatever it is. This does not count for browser support. We're going to be looking at browser support in another video. But we'll get rid of that, and we'll get rid of this. And I'm just going to take this secondary, and I'm going to do a cut, and let's move it all the way back up, go to my root, and declare it down here. And now they've all changed. Yay! So that's why we usually declare them in the root. One thing that you can do, which is interesting, is you can overwrite things when in different places. So let's say here on my H1, we're going to say actually let's just do it on all of them, H1, H2, H3. We're going to give them the color of var secondary color. So they've all changed. And intro, we're going to take this off for a second. Okay, so all of my headings now are using my secondary color. And we're going to make it so it's only that, just so we don't have any confusion. There we go. So we can see all my headings are using the secondary color, which is this blue color here. Now, one thing that I can do is inside of different areas, I can actually redefine what my variable is. So here on my intro, which is this text that's up here at the top, right now,
So you can set another secondary color there.
Color as steel blue.
Right.
And my H1 is using that secondary color. But what I could do is I could say in my intro, secondary color, whoops. Oh yeah, that's right. Secondary color is green. And you'll see it actually changed it only here. This is the same behavior as if you had your body. You put, or here I have a font size of 0.9, and then I go on my sales points here and I say the font size is 1.5. Right? In that area, the font size is going to get a lot bigger because I've overwritten my body's font size.
Alright,
The
sure.
exact same thing is happening here.
You can override the variable name.
Secondary colors, what the property is. So everywhere in my site, it's steel blue, except my intro, it's green. And then I could come on this one and I could say that in here, secondary color.
So he set a secondary color in the root, which is like the highest scope, but then if he overrides it here in the intro where this H1 is, the H1 will take the secondary color of what it's I guess the closer scope, or it will take the secondary color from the scope of the intro here, not from the root, because intro is closer to H1 than the root, or at least that's how I understand it. It may not work that way.
Is actually yellow, and it's going to change these ones to yellow. Now this can have its purposes,
Or it's the other way around. As the program goes, it says the secondary color in the root, and then when it goes into section, it overwrites it, and then H1 takes the overwritten value. But right here, the secondary color is still the one from the root.
Be careful with it.
I guess that
It's
makes more
not-
sense.
You're sort of defeating the purpose of using the variables in a way if you're redefining them throughout your site. It's going to make it just as hard to go back through your site to fix them. But it is
Yeah,
important
there is really no
that
point in doing that.
cascade
But
just like everything else does with CSS.
right.
But in general, and we're going to look at an exception for this when we get to one of our videos where we build out some stuff. So just be careful with this. There are cases where you want to do this, but it can be a dangerous proposition at times, and it also defeats the purpose of using variables if you're just redefining them constantly. The whole point of these is so you can have everything defined in one spot, and then you can automatically change it or update it as you're going by only changing one thing instead of having to dig through all your other things. Whereas if you have variables defined everywhere, what's the point, right? So just try and keep them as much as possible and where it makes sense in the root, because that's where they're most useful.
And that's CSS variables in a nutshell. I hope you learned something. If you did, please leave a comment down below to let me know. Hit the like button if you liked the
Perfect.
video, and if you haven't yet subscribed,
Coming
please
from the
consider
Odin
hitting that
project.
subscribe button
There
so
you
we
go.
do videos like this every single week. And
So we have 2 more things to read through, and I'm first going to take a quick break, and after that we'll come back to it and read through of these. Do we have any additional resources? We have one using CSS. Is this the same video? No, it's another one. Okay. We'll watch this last. So 10-minute timer, I'm taking a quick break because I've been speaking non-stop for an hour, and after 10 minutes I'm coming back so we can read through these articles and watch the videos. Alright, be right back. Alright, I am back. Supreme Overload says, see you next time, bro. All the best, bro. Thank you so much for sticking with us. I truly appreciate you, my man. Have a good one. Now, I thought it might be good to do a lead code problem after this, so I think what we're going to do is I'm going to read through these articles, watch the video, and we'll see if I'm going to take another break or we'll jump straight into lead code, but I don't want to get too rusty with JavaScript, so I think it will be a good idea to do some lead coding. What else do we have to remove from here? Sidebars. I think that's it. Okay, what is this about? Using CSS Custom Properties. I don't need headphones. Alright, so custom properties, sometimes referred to as CSS variables or cascading variables, are entities defined by CSS authors that represent specific values to be reused throughout a document. They are set using the property at rule or by custom property syntax. Example, primary color blue with the double hyphens. Custom properties are accessed using the var function. Complex websites have very large amounts of CSS, and this often results in a lot of repeated CSS values. For example, it's common to see the same color used in hundreds of different places in the style sheets. Changing a color that's been duplicated in many places requires a search and replace across all rules and CSS files. Custom properties allow a value to be defined in one place and then referenced in multiple other places so that it's easier to work with. Another benefit is readability and semantics. For example, main text color is easier to understand than the hexadecimal color. I think this is green. I'm not sure. I'm curious what that is, but it's either green or red. It's green, right? I'm colorblind, so I think that's green. Especially if you're using the color, especially if the color is used in different contexts. So, custom properties defined using two dashes are subject to cascade and inherit their value from their parent. The property at rule allows more control over the custom property and lets you specify whether it inherits its value from a parent, what the initial value is, and the type constraints that should be applied. Note that variables do not work inside media queries and container values. You can use the var function in any part of a value in any property on an element. You cannot use var for property names, selectors, or anything aside from property values, which means you can't use it in a media query or container query. That's interesting. Declaring custom properties. In CSS, you can declare a custom property using two dashes as a prefix for the property name or by using the property at rule. The following sections describe how to use these two methods. Property. Using a prefix of two dashes, a custom property prefix with two dashes begins with followed by the property name. Example is my property, and the property value that can be any valid CSS value. Like any other property, this is written inside the rule set. The following example shows how to create a custom property main background color and uses a named color value of brown. Alright, and this is defined in a section. The selector given to the rule set section defines the scope in which the custom property can be used. For this reason, a common practice is to define custom properties on the root pseudo class. so that it can be referenced globally. This doesn't always have to be the case. You maybe have a good reason for limiting the scope of your custom properties. Custom property names are case sensitive. Using the property at rule. The property at rule allows you to be more expressive with the definition of a custom property, with the ability to associate a type with the property, set default values, and control inheritance. In the following example creates a custom property called logo color, which expects a color. That's right, so they do a property logo color, syntax color, inherits false, initial value is coffee. If you want to define or work, if that's actually the color of a coffee, I'm going to be speechless. No, not even close. Okay, that would have been a cool Easter egg in the game of life. If you want to define or work with custom properties in JavaScript instead of directly in CSS, there is a corresponding API for this purpose. You can read about how this works. In the CSS properties and value API page. Referencing custom properties with var, regardless of which method you choose to define a custom property, you use them by referencing the property in a var function in place of a standard property value. Alright, so that's how I use it with the var. First steps with custom properties. Let's start with some HTML that we would like to apply some styles to. There is a div that acts as a container that includes some child elements, some with nested elements. So you have a container, another div with class of 1, you have a p tag, 1, 2, 3, and so on, text area, an input. Okay. We'll use the following CSS to style a few different elements based on their classes. Some layout rules are not shown below, so we can focus on colors. Depending on their classes, we're giving elements cornflower blue or aquamarine background colors. Alright, sure. This produces the following result. There is an opportunity to use custom properties to replace repetitive values across these rules. After defining main background color in the container scope and referencing its value in multiple places, the update styles looks like this. So they set a variable for the cornflower blue and use that instead with the var main background color. Using the root pseudo class, for some CSS declarations, it's possible to declare this. Higher in the cascade and let CSS inheritance solve this problem. For non-trivial projects, this is not always possible. By declaring a custom property on the root pseudo class and using it where needed throughout the document, a CSS author can reduce the need for repetition. So what they did here is they set it in the root instead of the container, and basically the exact same thing. Alright. This leads to the same result as the previous example, yet allows for one canonical declaration of the desired property value, which is very useful if you want to change the value across the entire project later. Basically increasing the scope. Okay. Inheritance of custom properties. A custom property defined using two dashes instead of property always inherits the value of its parent. This is demonstrated in the following example. Always inherits the value of its parent. A custom property defined always inherits the value of its parent. So div with the background color of box color, and 2 and 3 are set to box color cornflower blue, and the 3 set as aquamarine. So 3, this one is set with the aquamarine, and this is set as cornflower blue. So I guess this div will be cornflower blue, and this will be aquamarine. Да, какво става, брат? Учим се да кодваме. Ама трябва да говоря на английски. Извинявай, какво правиш? Alright, so the results of var box color depends on the inheritance are as follows. Class 1, invalid value, which is the default value of a custom property defined in this way. So 1, there is no defined like class, and we don't use any variable there. For class 2, cornflower blue, the 3 is aquamarine. Yep, I was speaking English too. Nice. How is it going? Hit me up on iMessage later. One aspect of custom properties that the examples above demonstrate is that they don't behave exactly like variables in other programming languages. The value is computed where it's needed, not stored and reused in other places of a style sheet. For instance, you cannot set a property's value and expect to retrieve the value in a sibling's descendant rule. The property is only set for the matching selector and its descendant. Using property to control inheritance, so the property at rule lets you explicitly state whether the property inherits or not. The following example creates a custom property using the property at rule. Inheritance is disabled, there is a color date type defined, and an initial value of cornflower blue. Great, you looking for a new job? No, not really. I will try to make another business, but I need to learn how to code it first. Tetea, my friend, what is up, my guy? I'm going to make something like Fiverr, but for influencers. So you know how in Fiverr there are gigs, but I'm going to make it like a marketplace where businesses can find influencers, because in Bulgaria the influencers are not very correct in their business, and often they do scam with the items that you send them, and they don't provide anything for the money that you provide, so they'll just take the items and ghost you. So it will be like a marketplace when you can look at influencers as a business, hire one, and we'll hold the payment until they send a video or something like that. So we'll be a middleman and a marketplace. But I'm learning full stack so I can code it properly and not do it in like WordPress or anything. But yeah, I'm starting from the beginning. I guess I'll take a few months to learn how to do it properly, and then we'll do it on stream as well. Right. The parent element sets box color to a value of green and uses box color as a value for its background color. The child element also uses background color, and we would expect it to have the color green if inheritance was enabled or when it was defined with the double dash syntax. So let's see. Interesting. I can help you with that if you proceed with using React. Yep, perfect. I'm actually going through the Odin project and the foundations. I've gone through the entire thing. Now I've picked up the full stack JavaScript, and later on in the course I'm currently on the intermediate HTML and CSS, which is kind of boring, but after that we're moving to React. So yeah, I guess I can take a helping hand. We've done something pretty cool on stream. I can show you. We've done that with 3JS. My friend, this is how to project. My friend, this is how to project. Yeah. I'm not sure what you're asking, brother, but we've done this on stream, this with 3JS, and it needed to be like 2D, just basic on the Odin project, but we stepped it up a notch. It was really fun to program. But anyways, where are we? So here they set inherits as false as this property box cover. So because inherits false is set in the at row and the value for the box cover property is not declared within the child scope, the initial value of cornflower blue is used instead of green. That would have been inherited from the parent. So the parent box cover is set to green and the child is using that box cover. So box cover, I see. Background cover, box cover, cornflower blue. Here the parent overrides it, but the child is not going to inherit this one because it's set here as inherits false. Which courses are you taking? I'm just going through the Odin project. It has I have to go through all of these, and I've already went through the foundations, which was HTML, CSS and JavaScript. But yeah, I like it because there's a lot of projects and they don't tell you exactly how to do it. You just move through the lessons, you read documentation, and then you do the projects. So I like this style of learning more than watching tutorials or videos. Alright, the custom property fallback rule, we've already learned about this, how when using the property with the var you can set a fallback value that will get used if there is a problem with your variables. So we'll move past this. Fallbacks using the add property initial value. So aside from using var, the initial value defined in the property add rule can be used as a fallback mechanism. In fact, we've already seen this in the property inheritance section. The following example sets an initial value of box color to cornflower blue using the property add rule. In the rule set following the add rule, we want to set box color to aquamarine, but there is a typo in the value name. The same is true for the third div, where we've used toRem for the custom property that's expecting a valid color value. Both toRem and aquamarine are invalid color values, so the initial value of cornflower blue is applied. Alright, they set it right here as initial value instead of a fallback. Okay, invalid custom properties. Each CSS property can be assigned a defined set of values. If you try to assign a value to a property that is outside its set of valid values, it's considered invalid. When the browser encounters an invalid value for a regular CSS property, for example a value of 16 pixels for the color, it discards the decoration and elements are assigned the values that they would have had in the decoration did not exist. So they basically ignore it, it skips over it. Alright, and in the following example we see what happens when a regular CSS decoration is invalid. So color 16 pixels is discarded and the previous color blue rule is applied instead. If you need a video course for the React part, there is a great course in O'Reilly React Complete Guide. Alright, sure, I'm going to bookmark it. Thank you. Let me bookmark this. Is it this one? React the Complete Guide. Let me bookmark this. Thank you so much. Yep, perfect, thank you. So here's color blue, and usually since this is written underneath it would overwrite it, but here the color is invalid, so it will just take the color of blue, it will ignore that. Alright, however, when the values of custom properties are parsed, the browsers doesn't yet know where they will be used, so it must consider nearly all values as valid. Unfortunately, these valid values can be used via the var functional notation in a context where they might not make sense. Properties and custom variables can lead to invalid CSS statements, leading to the concept of valid at computed time. When the browser encounters an invalid var substitution, then the initial or inherited value of the property is used. This example is just like the last one, except we use a custom property. Free trial does not require a credit card, so it's kind of free. Fuck yeah, I appreciate that. Otherwise I just make a Revolut virtual. They can have that. Alright. The browser substitutes the value of text color in place of var text color, but 16 pixels is not a valid property for the value of color. Upstairs substitution, so property doesn't make sense. So the browser handles this situation in two steps. First, it checks if property color is inheritable. If it is, but this P doesn't have any parent with the color property set. So we move on to the next step, which is set the value to its default initial value, which is black. Alright, so the default rule set in the browser, I see. For such cases, the property out rule can prevent unexpected results by allowing to define the initial value of the property. This paragraph is initially black and inherits false, syntax color initial. So it will take the initial value first, and if it's not defined, it will revert to black. Values in JavaScript. To use these values of custom properties in JavaScript, it's just kind of like standard properties. Get property value, element style, get property value, get variable from inline style, get variable from wherever, get computed style element, get property value, set variable on inline style, element style, set property my var.js as var plus 4. Alright, so we've gone through this MDN article, and we got this one from CSS Tricks. Let me zoom out a little bit. Alright, this one's kind of longer, but it does have examples. I don't know why they styled it from right to left. Like, why is this title on the right? So why care about CSS custom properties? A custom property is most commonly thought of as a variable in CSS, right? So card spacing, so on, you can reuse spacing. Above spacing is the custom property with 1.2 rem as the value, and var spacing is the variable in use. Perhaps the most valuable reason to use them, not repeating yourself. In the example above, I can change value in one place and it will have effect on two things. It brings something programming languages do to CSS. There is a good bit to know about custom properties, so let's get into it. They help dry up your CSS, don't repeat yourself, so on. They are particularly helpful for things like creating color themes. They unlock interesting possibilities in CSS in no small part because they cascade. The fact that they can be updated in JavaScript opens up even more interesting possibilities. Alright, sure. We have a table of contents. I'll skip over that. Naming custom properties. Custom properties must be within a selector and start with 2 dashes. Properties. As properties, you can set the value of a custom property with another custom property. So where do they do that? In OK, in warning. Sure, I'll reach out to you later in the evening on ideas. Perfect, thanks so much. I have a lot to share with you, so it will be interesting, I promise. Some people like doing it this way because it allows the name of custom property to be descriptive and then use another property with a more functional name, again helping keeping things dry. It can help even make the functional names more readable and understandable. It is best to stick with letters, numbers and dashes while making sure the property is defined inside of a valid selector. Okay, yeah. You see, it will be interesting. Valid values for custom properties. So I guess anything that is valid in CSS is also valid as a custom property value. They can be hex value, cover functions, units of all kinds, and even strings of text. They can be strings of text, okay. Sure. Custom properties, a state. These are just different articles. I don't think we need to go through them all. But these custom properties don't have to be complete values like that. Let's look at how useful it can be to break up valid CSS values into parts we can shove into custom properties. So breaking up values, you can use custom properties to break up multi-part values. Let's imagine you're using a cover function, say RGBA. Each cover channel value in there can be its own custom property that opens up a ton of possibilities, like changing the alpha value for a specific use case, or perhaps creating cover themes. Splitting covers, take HSL cover for example, we can split it into 2 parts, then very easily adjust the parts where we want. Maybe we're working with the background color of a button, we can update specific parts of the HSL markup when the button is hovered, in focused or disabled without declaring background on any of those states at all. So button HSL, they'll have it when declaring the background, they just use the variables as each one. Okay, so button hover, change the lightness on hover. So when you hover on the button, this L value will bump up to 75. When you focus on it, the S will bump up to 75. And when the cover is disabled, it will become less opaque, make it look disabled. That's pretty cool, right? By breaking apart values like that, we can control parts of them in a way we never could before. Just look at how we didn't need to declare all of the HSL arguments to style the hover, focus and disabled state of a button. We simply overrode specific HSL values when we needed to. Pretty cool stuff indeed. So we can do this in shadows and gradients as well. Box shadow doesn't have a shorthand property for controlling the shadow spread on its own, but we could break out the box shadow spread value and control it as a custom property. Alright, so here's a demo. It's again with hover, and we change the spread on hover, as I can see. Yep, so when we hover, the spread changes, and the spread is set right here in this custom property, but when we hover over it, we override the spread, and then when we are not hovered, it's back to default. That's pretty cool indeed. We don't have a demo for the gradients, but there is no such thing as a background gradient angle or the like shorthand for gradients. With custom properties, we can change just change that part as if there was such thing. There is no demo, so you have to imagine it, but anyways, yeah, I'm not sure what they do here. Comma separated values like backgrounds. Any property that supports multiple comma separated values might be a good candidate for splitting values too, since there is no such thing as targeting just one value of a comma separated list and changing it alone. Background image. Say you wanted to remove just one of many multiple backgrounds at a media query. You could do that with custom properties like this, making it a trivial task to swap or override backgrounds. So with the media query, they add in another background image when the main width is above 1500 pixels. Grids, we're on a roll here, so we might as well do a few more examples. Like, hey, we can take a grid tempo comms property and abstract its values into custom properties to make it super flexible grid system. And in this case, they make the edge from 10 pixels to 15%. I don't remember what like, I'm not sure what this edge will do, but there is not a demo. They should have put a demo in each one, but it's okay. Transforms, CSS will soon individual transforms, but we can get it sooner with custom properties. The idea is to apply all the transforms an element might get up front and control them individually as needed. This, I think, I don't know how old this article is, but I think we got transforms in CSS. Concatenation of unit types. There are a few times when combining parts of values doesn't work quite how you might hope. For example, you can't make 24 pixels by smashing 24 and px together. It can be done though by multiplying the row number by a number value with a unit. So so this will not work out where we have value plus pixels, and this will work out. We have a calculation because calc can mix in different types of values. So for example, we can calculate 100 viewport heights minus 3 rem. It will work, but with calc we can do it. So they do the value times 1 pixel. I see. Okay, so we don't really need the unit, but pixel converter. We don't really need that unit to do it. Okay, more articles. Using the cascade. The fact that custom properties use the cascade is one of the most useful things about them. You've already seen it in action in many of the examples we've covered, but let's put a point on it. Say we have a custom property set pretty high up on the body and then set again on a specific class. We use it on a specific component, and this way the background color, for example, it will take in the background from its closest scope parent, or I'm not sure how to explain it, but it will take the one closest to it. I've already read through it. It was I think either on this page or in an article, but I've came to understand it. I think my sub go is still not working because 4 people subscribed today, but the sub go has not moved and I didn't receive any alerts, which is very annoying. But anyways, The model in the sidebar has a gray background because custom properties, like many other CSS properties, inherit through the HTML structure. Each module takes the background value from the nearest ancestor where it's being defined in CSS. So you have one CSS decoration, but it's doing different things in different contexts thanks to the cascade. That's just cool. This plays out in other ways. So we have a button with full of default and button hover, I win when hovered. These are more specific selectors, so resetting custom properties, here we'll override those in button. That's interesting to think about, because when we apply hover on it, indeed it's a more specific selector than just button. I just haven't thought about it this way, but indeed adding a pseudo class to an element makes it more specific. So media queries don't change specificity, but they often come later or lower in the CSS file than where the original selector sets a value, which also means custom property will be overwritten inside the media query. Alright, so here, because this media query is lower, they're saying it will override the body when it is inside. I'm not sure. Media queries aren't only for screen sizes, they can be used for things like accessibility preferences, for example dark mode. Okay. Yeah, you can set the default like color scheme in a media query, and based on what the user defined in his browser, you can use either dark mode or light mode or any other color scheme. Okay, the root thing, you often see custom properties being at the root. Here's what that means. There is no particularly compelling reason to define custom properties like that. It's just a way of setting custom properties as high up as they can go. If you like that, that's totally fine. I find it somehow more normal feeling to apply them to the HTML or body selectors. When setting properties I intend to make available globally or everywhere. There is also no reason you need to set variables at this board of scope. It can be just as useful and perhaps more readable and understandable to set them right at the level you're going to use them, or fairly close in the DOM tree. Alright. What else? Note that setting a custom property on the module itself means that property will no longer inherit from an ancestor unless we set the value to inherit. Like other inherited properties, there are sometimes reasons to specify them in place at the global level, and other times we want to inherit them from the context at the component level. Both are useful. What's cool about custom properties is that we can define them in one place, inherit them behind the scenes, and apply them somewhere completely different. We take control of the cascade. Alright, sure. Combining with important, you can make an important modifier within or outside of a variable. So override red, the color variable red is important, and then we use color border red. I don't see why you need to make them important in that case, but I guess let's see if they tell us. But applying important to the color variable makes it difficult to override the value of the color variable, but we can still ignore it by changing the color property. The behavior of important inside the values of custom properties is quite unusual, but the gist is ultimately important is stripped from the value of the custom property, but it's used when determining which value wins when it's set in multiple places. So I guess the red will win here in the div. although using the ID is more specific. But let's see. If both these selectors apply to an element, you might think that the ID value would win because of the higher specificity, but really red will win because of the important, but then ultimately be applied without the important. It's a little funky to wrap your head around, so I understand. Basically this is set as important and we're using the cover here, so this will win over this, but here we set the cover and we'll use this cover from this div. Yeah, it's a bit tricky to explain, I guess. And here we'll use the cover red, but it's not like writing cover red important, it is just cover red. That is very indeed tricky to wrap your head around it. If applying the important outside of the custom property, like second example, to code block sub or our dash border variable remains low specificity, easy to override, but it's hard to change how that value will be applied to the border itself because the entire decoration retains important. Alright, so I think we're kind of at the middle. So where is it? Custom property fallbacks. We have a bit more to read through. Alright. Custom property fallbacks. So the var function is what allows fallback values. This one I think I can skip through it because, as I said, I already understand that the var can take an optional fallback value, and if there's something wrong with our variable, it will take the fallback. Using calc and custom properties, even more powerful custom properties, even more power of custom properties is unlocked when we combine them with math. This kind of thing is common, so padding calc var spacing, which is 2rem divided by 2, and we could also use that to calculate the hue of a complementary color. Alright, sure, calc can even be used with multiple custom properties. Okay, deferring the calc, it might look weird to see calculations like math without a calc. It might look weird to see calculations like math without a calc. Valid, but the math isn't actually performed just yet, so you're setting up font size as base font size times the modifier, but it is going to calculate it at the point where you call the variable. Oh no, it says this isn't going to work, so I spoke too soon. The trick is that as long as you eventually put in a calc function, it works fine. So this time they call it, but they call it inside of a calc, and this will do it. I understand, because here you just have var font size and it will be this inside the var, but we actually need to calculate it with the calc. Alright, perfect. This might be useful if you're doing quite a bit of math on your variables and the calc wrapper becomes distracting or noisy in the code. The property attrue in CSS allows you to declare the type of a custom property as well as its initial value and whether it inherits or not. It's sort of like you're creating an actual CSS property and have the ability to define what it's called, its syntax, and how it interacts it's with the cascade and its initial value. So this is a more detailed way of defining variables. This means that the browser knows what kind of variable it's dealing with rather than assuming everything is just a string. That means you can animate things in a way you couldn't otherwise. For example, you have a star-shaped icon, you want to spin around with keyframes and rotate with the transform. So you do this. You have a star, you set a r variable of 0 direction, transform, rotate, var, animation, spin, 1 second, linear infinite, and you define keyframe spin at 100%. R is 360 degrees, so it will spin from 0 to 360 infinitely. Do a full spin each second, basically. That actually won't work as the browser doesn't know what 0 degrees and 360 degrees are valid angle values. You have to define them as an angle with property for that to work. So syntax angle. So I see. Instead of just leaving it as R, you can change the property attrus and say it's an angle value. Initial value 0 degrees, and in here it's false. I think you can actually remove that because its initial value is already 0 degrees, but yeah, I'm not sure. The demo is not working either. Commas in values. So this can be a smidge confusing, maybe not so much this. But below you need a sharp eye to realize the fallback value is actually 1.2, 2 dot. The first comma separates the fallback, but all the rest is part of the value. So fallback value is actually this. Scale var. So this one and this is the fallback. Interesting. Advanced usage. Resize this demo to see the grid of inline block items. Change the number of columns from 4 to 3 to 1. Yep, 4, 3, 1. Here's a few more favorite examples that show off advanced usage of custom properties. The initial and white space trick. Think of media queries and how when one thing changes, example, the width of the page, you can control multiple things. That's kind of the idea with this trick. You change one custom property and control multiple things. The trick is that the value of initial for a custom property will trigger a fallback while an empty white space value will not. For the sake of explanation, it lets define two globally scoped custom properties on and off. So on is initial and off you don't define a value for some reason, but say we have a dark variation class which sets a number of different properties. The default is off, but it can be flipped to on whenever. So we have dark with a variable of off, and on the class of dark you set the variable to on. This could be a media query or whatever. Now you can use dark to conditionally set values that apply only when you flipped dark to on. And in this demo Where do we flip it? Like here on. Oh, I cannot write in it. Alright, anyways. We are at inline styles, so it's totally legit to set custom property in HTML with an inline style. Alright, that's pretty cool. That will, like any inline style, have a very high level of specificity. This can be super useful when the HTML might have access to some useful styling information that would be too weird or difficult to put in a static CSS file. A good example of that is maintaining the aspect ratio of an element. Okay, now I can set up some CSS to make a box of that exact size whenever I need to. The full write-up on that is here, but here's the CSS that uses trickery like OL padded box applied to a pseudo element, which pushes the box to the desired size. Alright, that's too much for now, but these days we have a native aspect ratio property in CSS, so setting that in the inline style might make more sense going forward. Okay, hovers and pseudos. There is no way to apply a hover style or any other pseudo classes or elements with inline styles. That is, unless we get tricky with custom properties, which is another article. Say we want custom hover colors on some boxes, we can pass that information in as a custom property, then use it in CSS, which of course can style a link's hover state. So this div.hover, and they override the, no, they just use the hover color variable, which is yellow, and hover after IAM attribution style background color var hover color. So it will say IAM yellow. Is that it? Custom properties and JavaScript. This is, wait, mouse move. Here is an example of a red square that is positioned with custom properties, and JavaScript updates those property values with the mouse position. So we add an event listener to the root element on mouse move, and we set root.style.set property, and I guess it dynamically creates this red box that follows the mouse. Yep. Okay. Typically you think of JavaScript passing values to CSS to use, which is probably 99% of usage here, but know that you can pass things from CSS to JavaScript as well. As we've seen, the value of a custom property can be fairly permissive. That means you could pass it a logical statement. For example, how did I open that? That was so strange. Logic if x is more than 5, document body style background blue. You could pass a logical statement. Then grab that value and execute it in JavaScript, so it will get component style from logic. It will wow, that is impressive. Actually, the JavaScript will grab that which CSS doesn't understand, but will grab it from the CSS and evaluate it. That's very cool. Custom properties are different than preprocessor variables. Alright, say you're already using Sass, less, or stylus. All those CSS preprocessors offer variables, and it's one of the main reasons to have them as part of your build process. variables usage in SAS. So they set a brand color to red, and they use it in the class of marketing as color. Okay. So do you even need to bother with CSS native custom properties then? Yes, you should, and here is why in a nutshell. Native CSS custom properties are more powerful than preprocessor variables. Their integration with the cascade in the DOM is something that preprocessor variables will never be able to do. Native CSS custom properties are dynamic. When they change, perhaps via JavaScript or with a media query, the browser repaints what it needs to. Preprocessor variables resolve to a value when they're computed, compiled, and stay at that value. Alright. Going with a native feature is good for the longevity of your code. You don't need to pre-process native CSS. I cover this in much more detail in this article. To be totally fair, there are little things that preprocessor variables can do that are hard or impossible with custom properties. Say you wanted to strip the units of a value, for example, you can do that with SAS, but you have much harder time with custom properties in CSS alone. So can you preprocess custom properties? Kinda. You can do this with SAS, just to pick one popular preprocessor, and they're setting a variable brand color to red, and in body they're using a CSS custom property of brand color, and they set it to the SAS variable. All that's doing is moving a SAS variable to a custom property that could be useful sometimes, but not terribly. SAS will just make brand color red. They are not process the custom property away. If a browser doesn't support custom properties, that's that. You can't force a browser to do what custom properties do by CSS syntax transformations alone. There might be some kind of JavaScript polyfill that parses your CSS and replicates it, but I really don't suggest that. The post CSS custom properties plugin though does do CSS syntax transforms to help. What it does is figure out the value to the best of its ability and outputs that along with the custom property. So like again in the root they set a custom property brand color to red, and in the body they apply that. It will output like this. So root brand color red var. This means you get a value that hopefully doesn't seem broken in browsers that lack custom property support, but does not support any of the fun things you can do with custom properties, and will not even attempt to try, but a bit dubious about how useful that is. I'm a bit dubious about how useful that is, but I think this is about the best you can do, and I like the spirit of attempting to not break things in older browsers or newer browsers. Availability. Another thing that is worth noting about the difference between is that with CSS preprocessor the variables are available only as you're processing. Something like brand color is meaningless in your HTML or JavaScript, but when you have custom properties in use, you can set inline styles that use those custom properties and they'll work, or you can use JavaScript to figure out their current values in context if needed. Aside from somewhat esoteric features of preprocessor variables, examples, the math possibilities, custom properties are more capable and useful. This flipped my whole perspective on CSS preprocessors, because I thought their variables and the way you can do things with preprocessors is way more powerful and useful, but it seems like it's the opposite from this article, and it's a pretty interesting perspective shift to me. I've never thought about it that way. Custom properties and web components, shadow DOM. One of the most common and practical ways to style of web components with shadow DOM is by using custom properties as styling hooks. The main point of the shadow DOM is that it doesn't leak styles out of it, offering style isolation in a way that nothing else offers short of an iframe. Styles do still cascade their way inside, I just can't select my way inside. This means custom properties will slide right in there. So we have WhatsApp, and when you click it, it alerts with sub. Okay, button border doesn't cascade. WhatsApp, that's a custom. Wow. Class WhatsApp extends HTML element. Alright, anyways, this is the browser support, so on and so forth, and we're done with that. So that was quite a long read, and I think we're just going to listen to this video last. Let's see what they say. Using CSS custom properties like this is a waste. It's an interesting title. Alright, so let's check this out.
Important message to share with you, and it's hello, my friend and friends. Today I have an important message to share with you, and it's important enough. I'm fighting a cold right
Let me
now.
bump it up a
I'm
little.
kind of miserable, but I felt like it was worth it to issue sort of a public service announcement of sorts, where I want you to stop wasting your custom properties. The awesomeness that are custom properties. Because people always do it like this, where we have, you know, some custom properties all set up in the root, which is awesome. That's fine, no problems with that. But then if we look lower down in my code, we'll find stuff like this. So here, like on these sort of background thingies, I did them as custom properties. So then I'm putting the colors in there, and then I have the icons that I need to change the fill on for each one of them to have the right color. So I'm changing the fill of each one like this, and this is fine, it works, but it's a little bit annoying, and we end up with a whole bunch of selectors we don't actually need. So how do we improve on this? How do we use custom properties in a smarter way that leads to more maintainable projects and easier to deal with code bases? Well, it's actually pretty simple, and I'm actually going to delete all of this that I have right here, or let's comment it out actually, just in case we want to reference it a little bit later. And we're going to dive in here and make some code. So let's hit save. You can see all of those colors disappear. And let's go back up now to the main selector I have for my plans. And let's look really fast here just to get an idea. You can see I have these three that are set up. Very typical. We have the plan and then a modifier here that I'm using to control the colors and potentially make other changes if I had to. Inside each one of those, I have my icon at the top, I have my title in there, just a paragraph, my price, and a button down at the bottom of each one. So nothing too complicated in the HTML. So the plan is for each one of these. And the first thing I would recommend when we have elements, especially like this, or components or different things where you might have different colors for each one. This could even be for like your pricing tables. There's so many different things that this could apply to. It could even be for lists and other stuff where you have like different icon colors. There's a lot of different places where we could do this. I'd recommend using a locally scoped custom property, and we're going to be exploring the idea of private properties, or this term comes from Leah Veru, who called them pseudo private properties, as an idea of sort of stealing from JavaScript, where we just put an underscore here to sort of indicate that they are private properties. And I'll put a link to her article where she first explored this idea in the description if you want to read more about it. But on my plan here, what we might want to do is, well, we had those two colors that were coming in, and that background color was like that pseudo element, but it sort of looked like a shadow, like, you know, some sort of weird shadowy thing. So let's just call that shadow. And the other one that we had on there was our icon, so we can just say icon like this. And we obviously need to apply something to each one of these. And again, this is just saying this is sort of like a private property. It's something that's unique to my plan. It's not something we find up in our root, that we're just, you know, we're dealing with this locally right here. And what we're going to do here is actually use a custom property as well. And this can seem a little bit weird, and I'm going to call it shadow. but I'm going to give it a fallback, right? Because right now shadow doesn't actually exist anywhere. I ideally wouldn't have that maybe existing somewhere, but we'll talk about why this could exist in the root as well and why that's okay. And for now, let's just say red so it really stands out and we see it. Or, you know, those were actually a bit faded. So we'll go with pink on those. And then here, my icon, we're going to do the same thing, var of icon. And then on this one, we'll say that the default is red, just so it has a fallback that we can easily see. If this wasn't a demo, I would probably make those black, but you could make the fallback whatever you want. And because shadow and icon don't exist anywhere, these are the values that are going to be used if ever I use these anywhere. So let's go on that plan icon that we have right there, and I'm going to say that the fill on those should be my var icon. And we can see that that's working fabulously right there. And then we can actually do the same thing. Let's go to that pseudo element that I had over here. So there's the plan before. And in this case, let's just say that the background of it, background is my var. And in this case, we called it shadow. And you can see that's coming in right there. Why is this better than doing it this way? And then we have, you know, it's kind of weird. We have this double name, and I'll get to why, like, why is it shadow and shadow? We'll talk about that. And if you've been watching my videos for a while, this isn't exactly how I've been using this idea of the pseudo private property, where I usually don't bother with this side of it, but it makes a lot of sense, and I want to share how Vera explored this idea. So now what we can go down to here, and here we had to have the selector for my before of each one of them, and then we also had to have the selector of the icon for each one of them, which is a descendant selector, which some people don't like having. Instead of all of that, I can just come and have my plan param, and on that one I do that my shadow is going to be my var, and then here we just say that it's my color yellow, and in this case my 300 refers to the right one, and we can see it switched over. And we'll set up the other one too, which is my icon. So icon would be var color yellow 400, which is my darker yellow or more vibrant yellow, and we can see that comes in.
So he says the properties once, and then he redefines them, depends on where he uses them.
This is working in, if we come back and take a look
It's
here,
interesting.
we have the shadow, which is looking for a custom property of shadow without the underscore, and if it can't find that, it will go to pink. But as soon as we declare one, now we actually have a shadow, and it's going to work. And the advantage too with this is I don't have any setup, but I could, you know, if shadow existed in the root, it would use that default value that's in, or we'll call it default, it would use the cascade, it's being inherited into the plan, and that shadow variable would work. But then if we did redeclare something new in a more locally scoped thing, like I'm doing here, it's going to work for that as well. So we can take my param, let's set up the next one. So the next one here is my bike, and that one, I think for the two of them, is my cyan color. And then I can take these two, and what I really like about this is my rocket. There's I guess the main thing that I really like with this is I only need one selector, and I'm controlling things that are inside of there. And of course, we don't need to stop here with this sort of thing. Like, we have these buttons that are on here, and we might want to make some changes to those as well. And that's a little bit where things can get more interesting here. And we're going to look at how we can actually change these shadows to be a little bit better, and advantages with the custom properties on that as well, and then a few other things. But let's start with these buttons right here. So if I know that I want to make my button something that changed, like say it's a different hover color every time I'm hovering on one, I can come and create one of those. So we're going to say our button hover, which will be our var button hover. And then here, let's just make it red again. It doesn't have, you know, again, I wouldn't do this for production necessarily. Or actually, you know what, let's come here and do this as another custom property, because this could be fallback as well, where we can look at my color text, which is the current color that I have in the background there already.
Okay.
So if you ever want for fallbacks, you know, there's no harm in referencing back to other things. The pink and the red here might not be great areas to start with. You could have better fallbacks. And that way, if there is no modifier, you're still getting something that's perfect. But when the modifier comes on, that's when you're getting different situations or different things that are happening. So now what I can come down and let's set up my button to be able to do this. And this is one area we will need a descendant selector. And one of the reasons I like this is because I can keep all of this the same, and I have one class that's controlling all of these changes that are happening. I don't have to come onto my button and say, oh, this is a button yellow, and then this one's a button blue, and that one's a button purple, or I have to worry about naming or anything like that. I just have my pram, my bike, or whatever. This might be yellow, blue. Name those things the way you want. But then I'm not worried about modifying anything inside of there. I'm not modifying my icon class, or I'm not modifying my button class. I'm just relying on this one selector that can handle it all. So let's come and actually we'll do it right here. So we can have then my plan, and any button that's inside my plan can get these. And we'll look at why this is nice. Because actually, just really fast, if I did this normally, I'd have to have my plan pram and then button, or have the modifier class like I said, and then have to have this for each one of them. That's really annoying to have to repeat that every time I want that modifier to affect the button that's descendant inside of there. So in this case, we just say that I have my plan button hover, and we'll do the plan button focus as well. And for this, we can just come and say that the background color is my var button hover with the underscore here, and it's important when we're declaring it, we're using the private property version of it. So this is sort of setting the stage up, and then when we use it, then we can just use the non-underscore version of it. If you don't like that idea of having that fallback in there, you could probably approach this in a slightly different way. It's just the main idea here is take advantage of your locally scoped custom properties. So you definitely don't need to set it up exactly like this, but there is this nice benefit of having sort of, we can rely on the cascade, but sort of break the cascade where we need to, and it sort of just denotes as well that like where this is getting declared. My button hover should be something that I can find on my plan. It's not something I would go necessarily to find in my route. So we get my button hover that's right there, so let's hit save, and it should still work perfectly fine because that is going. Let's just go look really fast. That's looking at this, it can't find that, so it's going to the fallback really fast. If I made this my yellow 400, we can see that they've gone to that yellow, so they're relying on the fallback color right now. So we'll go back to the text
because there is no button hover.
Fallback. And then when we want to set it up, well, I don't need any new selectors. I don't need to worry about anything like that. I just come, and this one, the color of the text is going to be terrible on this one, but I just say my button hover is, we can just duplicate this actually, right? So we just add that in there, and we can come on each one of these, switch that, and this one would be my cyan, and then this one can be my purple. And now the hover color for each one has switched over without having to worry about it. I just come in here and I have these options. They become like levers that I can pull for the interior of what's happening within this element, which is just so nice. The other big advantage, and one of the best things with all of this, is the way that, and this is really nice with transitions and animations as well, when you need to make like small changes to things. But let's come and look at, I have this before right now as a pseudo element that I set up here, and I sort of needed to do that because I have a shadow on here, right? I have like a soft shadow, and when I first saw this, and actually I got this just so you know from I Code This, which is a website by Florin Pop, who you might know, and so it's a site that has like daily challenges that you can
that's very cool.
So every day.
Let me check this out. I Code This. This is like the front-end mentor, but coding challenges, project you can build to improve your coding skills. Let me log in with GitHub. Sure, authorize. That caught my eye. Start coding. Sorry. This is a car generator. Daily challenge is a user profile form. Cool, we can maybe do one of these on stream. I like this one. 30-day roadmap. Basics 404. That's cool. Sure, I like this one. Is there anything like more JavaScript specific step-by-step tutorial, courses, modes, make me functional, design to code, pro challenges, sink your teeth into bite-sized JavaScript challenges, want to get better at JavaScript? Yes. unavailable free. So there are only a couple of free ones and the other one are pro. Change the span to your personal name so that the panda will greet you properly. Alright, so it's not that interesting indeed, but they have a cool concept. Maybe if you purchase the pro subscription it will be better, but yeah, not too interesting then.
It opens up. It's completely free to join. If you join for free, you get the daily challenge every day. And if I do the start challenge, I can actually work on it within the browser. It's all here. I can do the challenge, save it, submit, see other people's solutions and stuff. It's a really fun site. I'll put a link to it down in the description. Just so you know, it is an affiliate link. So while you can join for free and do the challenges every day for free, if you do decide that you want to unlock more stuff and get the pro challenges and some of the other things that are available to you, then I'd get a small commission from that, so you'd be helping to support my channel at the same time, which I'd obviously appreciate very much. But if you don't know them, very cool site. But yeah, as I was looking at this, when I first looked at it, to me, instead of creating a whole pseudo element, that makes more sense as a shadow. But then I needed that softer shadow on the inner bits as well. And the reason that presented a problem was if I take this off, and I have that soft shadow that's already on there, right? So we have the plan, and then I have my shadow. If I wanted to have a second shadow on here, I 100% could. So let's come here and add a second shadow. I'm just gonna put a comma, and so I guess it'd be like -1 rem offset in both vertical and horizontal, 0 blur, 0 spread, and for now we've been doing red as our example. You can see it comes in and it works exactly like I'd want it to. The problem now is if I want to change this box shadow with a modifier class, I have to come in and redeclare the entire box shadow, right? So I'd have to come on my plan param and have this one and change this one just really fast. We can do that.
So he'll split it and he'll make the color
in here that's actually
a variable.
the color of the shadow, like the color here, nothing else. All these values, everything else is identical, and then I'd have to do the same thing on this one and make this one cyan, and then I'd have to do the next one and change the color of that one. And that's annoying when we have to redeclare entire things. And I'm sure if you've done animations or transitions, you've done this as well, where you have to, like, at a different animation stop, you have like a stop in your animation. You might have to declare a whole bunch of stuff, especially with transforms that you've already done that aren't changing from step to step, but you just have to have it there so it doesn't overwrite the existing thing, because we don't want it to overwrite the other box shadow, right? And then get rid of that soft shadow that was on there. We need to keep both of them. So that was actually why my custom property is called shadow too, because I saw it as a shadow. But if we're using locally scoped custom properties, I can completely do away with this, and I can just come in, and this would be my var shadow.
Yep.
And of course I want to be doing that pointing at my private property, so with the underscore, and hit save, and look at that, it just worked right away. So that's really awesome.
Alright, this is cool
the reason
indeed.
I like this is personally I find it a lot more maintainable
That saves
and
space.
easier to deal with, because there's a lot less code going on. I just have to
That's
pull
cool.
those levers that I want. And so like that's really good. And also just really fast, if I kept those as pseudo elements, I had a -z index on them to have to pull that that background backwards, but that could actually be really bad, because if I had a background set for like the area here, I'd actually lose it behind that. It's annoying dealing with -z indexes, so using a shadow also solves that problem. But another thing that makes it, and another reason that I really love this, and I've talked about this, I keep going on about it, but let's say I come in and I add another one here, and it should be in my list, but just for styling purposes, let's leave it outside, just so it's nice and big at the bottom. And we want this item to be like, this is the important one, right? So it's my light speed, and it's a bit bigger. But so I have this one, and this one I have my plan light on there. So I'm using the exact same HTML. The only thing I'm doing is changing one class here at the top, nothing else through the entire thing. I update my text, and then I just come down, and let's just duplicate that one right there, change this over to my light, and I don't have any custom properties set up for an additional color because I'm not forward thinking enough with these demos all the time. And then maybe this icon and this one can be lime, and then this one can be like a light green. And we get those colors that come in, and everything updates. My buttons updated. Again, the text color, I'd have to come in with something that could update my text colors too. But everything just comes in and updates without me having to do a lot of work. And of course, I'm doing this just with colors right now. This is not limited to only colors. You could be using this for absolutely any custom properties that you have set up and you might want to change that are within. And that's, for me, the real best part of locally scoped custom properties, is you're dealing with the parent and you can have as many pieces inside that are all being controlled with one nice simple selector when you do need to make changes. And if you enjoyed this video and you like just general CSS tips and tricks and things like that,
Thank you
might
so
really
much. I enjoyed it. Alright, so we're done with the custom CSS properties, and with that, let me just mark it as complete, and let me see what else we have to learn. So browser compatibility, cool. Alright, I'm ending the stream on that note. The sub count didn't work once again, but we've got 6 subscribers this stream, for which I'm truly grateful. Guys, thanks so much. I'll end the stream now, and tomorrow morning I'm doing another stream. We'll tackle browser compatibility and so on. We'll move throughout the course. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys for sticking with me for more than 2.5 hours. And see you tomorrow. Bye bye.